wahine toa that have carried this kaupapa for so many years, and I'm talking about all 5 wahine who have presented and gifted something to this conversation tonight, and it's just amazing how I could be a part of it, to be honest. My background is around waka, and my story goes back at least 6,000 years. When our tupuna, our collective tupuna of Te Moana Nui-a-Kiwa, left a place that is now known as Taiwan and visited every single island in the Pacific, like every single island. And over those 6,000 years, they honed in on their skills of navigation and of exploration and adventure and carrying the kōrero of Hawaii wherever they went until they arrived to Aotearoa. And the reason why I say that is because there's a framing that's been happening with Tuia 250, and that is of 1,000 years of Pacific history, or 250 years of partnership or dual heritage is how they put it. And I think that Sister Tina really put it really well, that you cannot talk about who we are now without going past beyond those 250 years or beyond those 1,000 years that we find ourselves here today. So all those kōrero about, so I come from a waka background, and in 2010 I was fortunate enough to be involved with a voyage called Te Moana, and we spent the next 3 years voyaging around the Pacific, meeting people like Emalani and that in Hawaii and all around the Pacific. And a lot of lessons were learned over those voyages, but also a lot of myths were dispelled during those voyages. And I'd like to share today, or this evening, around some of those myths that were dispelled as I was sailing, as we were navigating around Te Moana Nui-a-Kiwa. One of the earliest myths that we start with is around this idea of the great southern continents, Terras Australis. And that myth originated, well, it's a bit of a mystery where it originated, but the initial inklings were around the idea that the earth was flat and there's so much land in the north, and therefore we must need a lot of land in the south somewhere to balance it out. And that was a standing view until Captain Cook's arrival to Aotearoa and sort of dispelling this idea of Terras Australis. Another myth that was dispelled during navigating around the Pacific was this idea that God or the Spanish had put Maori and the Pacific peoples around the world. And this myth still prevails, with a lot of people thinking recently that the Chinese, there was a kōrero about the Chinese transporting Pacific peoples all over the world in that famous book. I can't remember the title, but who cares about it? And then there's a story of accidental drift, which was a theory that many people to this day have enjoyed to tell their children. And one of the two of the main architects of this story is Thor Heyerdahl and Andrew Sharp. Andrew Sharp was a New Zealander, and basically from white supremacist ideas, he formed that his ideas was that Māori did not have the intellect or the capacity to be able to manage these fleets, along with our Pacific cousins as well. Kōrero, we all know as, or a lot of us know as the Norwegian sailor who tested his Kontiki raft, which drifted on the Humboldt Current from the coast of Peru, and into one of the Tuamotu atolls in the Society Islands. And the forming of his theory was around the idea that he had seen these statues on Rapa Nui and they resembled atua and figures that he had seen in Peru. Of course, the unfortunate thing that he didn't realise is that when you have a raft that doesn't have a sail on, you actually have to get towed out by a boat onto the Humboldt Current before you, approximately 80 miles off the shore, before you can become a part of it. So, but his myth still prevails, and a lot of people, especially in the movie, I think it was in 2004 that the movie Kontiki came out. Brings me to another movie, Moana, that me and Tina had a long, heated discussion around for a couple of hours. But the thing that really struck me was how this idea that positive stereotypes, regardless of where they come from, and all stereotypes come from some form of supremacy, of an idea of savagery or something like that, regardless whether these are seen as positive or negative stereotypes, you ask the people they affect and it's always negative. And it also created a new myth around this idea that our ancestors were too dumb to go past the breakers because they thought some hugga bugga was out there waiting for us off the coast of some mysterious place that they talk about being around Tonga, Samoa. So the kōrero around that is around the time of Christ, where there was, 3,000 years ago, until the time of Christ, where there was no more westward migration of our tupuna into the last places like Tahiti or the Marquesas. However, if you look at a map, which many people have seen, you'll see the distance between Tahiti and Tonga or Samoa is greatly increased compared to the distance between Fiji and Vanuatu and islands like that if you go continue towards Taiwan. So from my voyaging experiences, what we've hypothesized is that instead these voyages, because they were of greater distance, was that our tupuna were exploring the vast expanse slowly and increasing their voyage every time they went out until they reached the, I think it's 15,000 kilometre or 1,500 mile mark, where they landed in the Marquesas 1,000 years later at the turn of, around the birth of Christ. 1,000 years later, we ended up in Aotearoa, which is around the same time that Eric the Red, does anyone know who he was? The great Norse sailor discovered Greenland by being blown, of course, between on his way to Norway. From Norway to Iceland. And it's interesting, I bring that up because it's interesting that a lot of the theories that Pākehā around our migration of the Pacific have actually applied to some of the stories where they hold in great reverence. So I'm not saying they revere us or anything, but what I'm saying is that they've managed to hide the stories or embellish their own stories and change the ideas around this great man, Eric the Red, who discovered Greenland despite there being Inuit and other people, other Inuit communities around, versus Māori who were, what's that word, emancipated, and which means they are like that picture, that Goldie and Steel. Emaciated, sorry. What's the word? Emaciated, meaning they're starving, hungry, and we're so relieved at this side of land that they, if anyone's seen the arrival of the Māoris to New Zealand by Charles Goldie and John Steele, which today is still displayed at the Auckland Art Gallery to much reverence as well. And so I guess what